Justin Vicky was just 33 years old when a tragic squatting accident took his life. Matheus Pavlac was just 19. Veto Perbazari had fame and muscle but lost it all in the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, they all met tragic endings. There is a hidden pattern. Jose Matheus Correia Silva. Our first story takes us to the vibrant city of Águas Claras, located in Brasília, Brazil, where a young man named Jose Matheus Correia Silva was living what many would consider an absolutely extraordinary life. At just 28 years old, Jose had already accomplished more than most people achieve in a lifetime. He wasn't just a competitive bodybuilder, although his accomplishments in that arena were certainly impressive. He was also a lawyer, a certified nutritionist, and a successful fitness entrepreneur who owned multiple supplement stores. When you think about the kind of drive, discipline, and intelligence required to juggle that many high-level pursuits simultaneously, you begin to understand why Jose was so widely admired in his community. On the competitive stage, Jose had demonstrated his dedication to the sport through years of disciplined training and competition. He placed 9th in men's physique at the 2018 South American Championships, going up against some of the best athletes the continent had to offer, and he had also earned an impressive 11th place finish at the prestigious 2017 Arnold Classic South America. These weren't just local competitions, these were international stages where the best of the best came to prove themselves, and Jose had shown that he belonged among that elite company. But Jose's impact extended far beyond his own competitive achievements. Through his work as a nutritionist and personal trainer, he had helped countless other individuals transform their own bodies and their own lives. His supplement stores provided the local fitness community with the products they needed to fuel their journeys, and his presence as a role model inspired others to believe that they too could achieve greatness if they were willing to put in the work. Then came November 22nd, 2024, a day that would shatter the lives of everyone who knew and loved him. Jose was training with friends at a local gym, doing what he had done countless times before when the unthinkable happened. Without any warning, Jose suffered a massive heart attack and collapsed right there on the gym floor. His friends immediately sprang into action, rushing him to a nearby fire station where paramedics and emergency personnel attempted to resuscitate him. For over an hour, they fought desperately to bring Jose back, performing CPR and doing everything in their power to restart his heart. But despite their heroic efforts, Jose could not be saved. What made this tragedy even more shocking was the complete absence of any warning signs. According to Jose's brother, who spoke publicly about the devastating loss, Jose had no known prior health issues. There was nothing in his medical history that would have suggested he was at risk for a sudden cardiac event. He was young, he was fit, he was the picture of health, and yet, in an instant, he was gone. He wasn't some reckless amateur pushing beyond his limits without understanding the risks. He was a certified nutritionist who presumably understood the importance of proper supplementation, recovery, and health monitoring, and yet even all that knowledge couldn't protect him from the silent danger lurking within. But Jose's story, as heartbreaking as it is, was far from an isolated incident. Just a few months later, another bodybuilder would collapse at the gym under eerily similar circumstances. This time, a man who had also built a career in entertainment. Veto Perbazari. Our second story introduces us to a man who had successfully built careers in not one, but two incredibly demanding fields: professional bodybuilding and acting. Veto Perbazari, known to his friends and fans simply as Vito, was a 44-year-old German bodybuilder who had leveraged his imposing physique and natural charisma into a multifaceted career that spanned the fitness industry and the entertainment world. He was perhaps best known to mainstream audiences for his memorable villain role in the hit Netflix series Dogs of Berlin, where his powerful screen presence and intimidating physical stature made him a perfect fit for the role. Within the bodybuilding community, Vito was a beloved figure, particularly among the Hardgainer crew, a collective of fitness enthusiasts and influencers who shared his passion for building muscle and inspiring others to pursue their fitness goals. His social media presence was substantial, and his posts regularly featured the kind of motivational content and training insights that his followers had come to expect and appreciate. The period leading up to Vito's death had been challenging. He had recently undergone surgery to repair a torn pectoral muscle, a common but serious injury among serious lifters, and he had also been recovering from a car accident. Despite these setbacks, Vito had remained positive and determined, gradually working his way back to the gym with a modified training program that focused on legs and cardiovascular conditioning, while his upper body continued to heal. Just one day before his death, Vito posted a progress selfie to his social media accounts, documenting his comeback journey and showing his followers that despite the obstacles, he was still fighting, still pushing forward, still committed to the lifestyle that had defined his entire adult life. On March 31st, 2025, Veto was at the gym doing interval training on a treadmill. Cardio work like this was a sensible choice for someone recovering from upper body surgery, and running intervals was exactly the kind of heart-pumping exercise that bodybuilders often incorporate into their routines to maintain cardiovascular fitness while building or maintaining muscle mass. But on this particular day, something went catastrophically wrong. While running on the treadmill, Veto collapsed from what investigators believe was a sudden heart attack. The man who had seemed so invincible on screen, who had battled back from surgery and accident alike, was gone in an instant. His death was announced publicly by his close friend and collaborator, filmmaker Saeed Ibrahim. Veto's death in 2025 shocked the fitness world, but the tragic pattern of bodybuilders collapsing at the gym stretches back decades. To understand just how long this has been happening, we need to travel back to 2011 and the story of a true legend of the sport, Frank Hillebrand. Now we travel back to 2011 to remember Frank Hillebrand, a former IFBB professional bodybuilder whose career represented some of the highest aspirations of the sport during one of its most competitive eras. Frank was a German athlete who had burst onto the international bodybuilding scene in the late 1980s and early 1990s, a time when the sport was experiencing unprecedented growth in popularity and when competition at the professional level was absolutely fierce. What set Frank apart from many of his contemporaries was his remarkable combination of aesthetics and symmetry. In a sport that was increasingly rewarding sheer mass above all else, Frank represented the classical ideal of bodybuilding, a physique that was not just big, but beautifully proportioned and visually stunning from every angle. This approach earned him widespread respect within the bodybuilding community and made him one of the top hopes for European bodybuilding during that era. His crowning achievement came at the 1990 Mr. Olympia competition, the Super Bowl of professional bodybuilding, where he placed an impressive 7th against the best bodybuilders on the planet. To even qualify for the Mr. Olympia stage required years of dedication and numerous victories at lower-level competitions, and to finish in the top 10 meant that Frank had proven himself among the absolute elite of the sport. After his competitive career wound down, Frank transitioned into personal training, eventually making his way to Las Vegas, Nevada, a city known for its fitness culture and abundance of high-end gyms. There, he built a successful practice helping others achieve their fitness goals, drawing on his decades of experience and his deep understanding of what it took to transform the human body. February 19th, 2011 started like any other day for Frank. He was at Gold's Gym, the legendary chain that had served as the birthplace of modern bodybuilding culture, going through his workout routine, but something felt wrong. Frank began experiencing breathing difficulties, the kind of warning sign that in retrospect clearly indicated something serious was happening. Rather than continuing to push through, he made the decision to move to the gym's lobby to rest and catch his breath. It was there, in the lobby of that iconic gym, that Frank collapsed from cardiac arrest. Paramedics arrived quickly and performed CPR, fighting desperately to revive him. Despite their best efforts, Frank Hillebrand passed away at the age of 45, leaving behind a legacy that would continue to inspire bodybuilders who valued aesthetics and symmetry above raw size. Frank was 45 when his heart gave out, an age that, while tragically young, at least allowed him decades to pursue his passion. But what about those taken even younger? Our next story involves an athlete whose life was cut short before it had truly begun. Matheus Pavlac. Perhaps no story on this list is more heartbreaking than that of Matheus Pavlac, a Brazilian fitness influencer who had captured the hearts of thousands of followers with his incredible transformation story, and who was taken from this world at the tragically young age of just 19 years old. Matheus's journey represented everything that is inspiring about fitness, the power of dedication to completely transform not just a body, but an entire life. As a child, Matheus had struggled with obesity. For many young people in that situation, the path forward seems impossibly difficult. The taunting from peers, the physical limitations, the emotional weight of carrying excess pounds through adolescence. But Matheus refused to accept that his childhood struggles would define his future. Over the course of 5 dedicated years, he underwent a dramatic transformation that took him from an overweight kid to a competitive bodybuilder with a physique that would have been impressive on someone twice his age. His competitive achievements, while still early in what should have been a long career, were already turning heads in the Santa Catarina bodybuilding scene. He had claimed the Mr. Blumenau title in the U23 division, establishing himself as one of the most promising young talents in Brazilian bodybuilding. Regional competitions were just the beginning. Many who followed his progress believed that national and even international success was just a matter of time for this rising star. But more than his competitive achievements, what made Matheus special was the way his story inspired other young people who were fighting their own battles against obesity and low self-esteem. His social media presence was a beacon of hope for teenagers who saw themselves in his before photos and dared to dream that they too could achieve the kind of transformation he had accomplished. In September 2024, Matheus completed what would be his final gym session. Shortly afterward, he was found dead at his home, reportedly from a massive heart attack. He was 19 years old, barely into adulthood, with his entire life stretching out before him. His death sent shockwaves through the fitness community and raised urgent questions about the demands that intense training routines place on young athletes athletes' hearts. Medical professionals and fitness experts alike were left struggling to understand how someone so young could be taken by a heart attack. While we don't know all the details of Matheus's training regimen, diet, or supplement use, his case highlights the very real dangers that can accompany the pursuit of extreme physiques, especially when that pursuit begins at a young age, before the body has fully matured. The questions his death raised about youth bodybuilding protocols, proper medical supervision, and the pressure young influencers face to maintain certain physiques remain urgently relevant today. Matheus's passing reminds us that youth offers no protection against cardiac tragedy in this sport. But if his case represents one extreme of the spectrum, our next story takes us to the opposite end, a man who pushed his body to almost incomprehensible limits in pursuit of maximum size. Ilia Yafimchic. If there was one bodybuilder who embodied the concept of pushing the human body to its absolute extreme limits, it was Ilia Yafimchic, the Belarusian mass monster known throughout the fitness world by his fitting nickname, the Mutant, or simply Golem. At 36 years old, Ilia had built one of the most extraordinary physiques ever seen in bodybuilding, not because of his competitive achievements, as he was primarily a non-competitive bodybuilder, but because of the sheer, almost incomprehensible size he had achieved. The statistics of Ilia's physique read like something from science fiction rather than reality. At his peak, he weighed approximately 340 pounds, with 25-inch biceps and a 61-inch chest. To put those numbers in perspective, his arms were larger than many people's thighs, and his chest measurement exceeded the waist measurement of most adults. He wasn't just big, he was otherworldly, a walking testament to just how far the human body could be pushed when someone was willing to dedicate their entire existence to the pursuit of maximum muscle mass. What set Ilia apart from many other mass monsters was his unusual transparency about the methods he used to achieve his extraordinary size. Through his popular social media accounts, he provided his followers with unflinching documentation of his intense workout routines, his admission of synthol use to enhance the appearance of certain muscle groups, and perhaps most shockingly, his 16,500 calorie daily diet that included 2.5 kilograms of steak every single day. While many bodybuilders guard their methods as closely held secrets, Ilia put everything out there for the world to see. In September 2024, Ilia suffered a heart attack at home, with some reports suggesting complications related to his training regimen. His wife immediately performed CPR, fighting desperately to keep him alive until emergency medical personnel could arrive. He was rushed to the hospital and placed in a medically induced coma, and for a brief time there was hope that he might pull through. But days later, the devastating news came. Ilia had been declared brain dead. The man who had built himself into something seemingly superhuman had been brought down by the very organ that no amount of training could strengthen enough to handle the demands he placed on it, his heart. Ilia's case sparked intense debate within the bodybuilding community about the wisdom of pursuing such extreme size. While his openness about his methods had earned him respect from some quarters, critics argued that his transparency about synthol use and massive caloric intake had potentially inspired others to pursue similar and potentially dangerous paths. Regardless of where one stands on that debate, there is no denying that Ilia pushed his body to places few humans have ever gone, and ultimately his heart paid the price. Ilia's honesty about his methods was unusual in the bodybuilding world, but there was one man who took transparency about the dark side of the sport to an entirely different level, a man whose influence reached millions and whose death would become one of the most talked about events in bodybuilding history. Piana. Perhaps no bodybuilder in the modern era achieved the kind of mainstream recognition and devoted following that Piana commanded. The American bodybuilder, entrepreneur, and YouTube personality had built an empire around his larger-than-life personality and his refreshingly honest approach to discussing the realities of professional bodybuilding. With over 1 million followers on YouTube alone, Rich had transcended the traditional boundaries of the bodybuilding world to become a genuine cultural phenomenon. What made Rich truly unique was his willingness to discuss topics that most professional bodybuilders avoided like the plague. He openly admitted to using anabolic steroids for over 20 years, breaking the code of silence that had long shrouded the sport's relationship with performance-enhancing substances. While this honesty was controversial in some circles, it earned him immense respect from fans who appreciated that he wasn't pretending to have achieved his massive physique through protein shakes and positive thinking alone. Rich was also a successful entrepreneur, launching his own supplement company and creating a brand that reflected his bold, unapologetic personality. His videos were must-watch content for anyone interested in bodybuilding, combining training advice with lifestyle content and the kind of charismatic entertainment that kept viewers coming back for more. In August 2017, Rich was at his Florida home getting a haircut when he suddenly collapsed. While this wasn't strictly a gym incident, medical professionals and observers widely attributed his collapse to the cumulative strain that decades of extreme bodybuilding had placed on his body. He was rushed to the hospital and placed into a medically induced coma, where he remained for weeks as doctors fought to save his life. Ultimately, those efforts proved unsuccessful. Piana passed away at the age of 46, with his autopsy revealing significantly enlarged organs, a condition that many medical professionals attribute to long-term steroid use. His death sent shockwaves through the bodybuilding community and beyond, serving as a stark reminder that even the most vibrant, seemingly unstoppable personalities are not immune to the consequences of pushing the human body beyond its natural limits. Rich's legacy is complicated. On one hand, his honesty about steroid use helped destigmatize conversations about performance-enhancing drugs and allowed for more realistic discussions about what it truly takes to achieve a professional-level physique. Rich Piana's death proved that fame and fortune offer no protection against the cardiovascular toll of extreme bodybuilding, but the pattern of professional bodybuilders dying from heart-related causes extends far beyond the social media era, as our next story demonstrates. Mike Horn. The bodybuilding community lost one of its respected veterans in April 2021 when Mike Horn, an IFBB professional bodybuilder, passed away at the age of 55 following a heart attack that left him fighting for his life for nearly 2 weeks. Mike's career in professional bodybuilding had spanned decades, and he was known throughout the industry as someone who had dedicated his entire adult life to the pursuit of physical excellence. Unlike some of the other athletes on this list, Mike was not at the gym when his health crisis began. However, his heart attack was widely understood to be connected to the cumulative stress that a lifetime of intense training and the practices common in professional bodybuilding had placed on his cardiovascular system. What made Mike's case particularly heartbreaking was the prolonged nature of his fight for survival. After suffering the initial heart attack, he lingered for 13 days, giving friends, family, and fans a brief window of hope that he might somehow pull through. During those 13 days, the bodybuilding community rallied around Mike, sending prayers and messages of support as they waited for updates on his condition. But on the 13th day, the news that everyone had been dreading finally came. Mike Horn had passed away, joining the growing list of professional bodybuilders whose hearts had given out before their time. His legacy lives on through the countless athletes he influenced and inspired during his long career in the sport. Mike's death represented a pattern that has become all too familiar in the professional bodybuilding world. A veteran athlete who had seemingly survived the most demanding years of competition, only to succumb to cardiovascular complications later in life. Cumulative damage inflicted on the heart over decades of extreme training, dieting, and in many cases, performance-enhancing drug use doesn't simply disappear when an athlete retires from competition. Instead, it lingers, silently weakening the cardiovascular system until one day, often without warning, it fails entirely. Mike Horn was 55 when his heart finally gave out, a reminder that the consequences of extreme bodybuilding can catch up with athletes even decades after their competitive prime. But for some, the end comes much sooner, as was the case with our next athlete. Danielle Seccarecci. Italy's bodybuilding community was devastated in 2013 when Danielle Seccarecci, one of the country's most impressive mass monsters, collapsed and died at the shockingly young age of just 33 years old. Standing at an imposing 6 feet 2 inches and carrying an enormous amount of muscle mass, Danielle had built himself into exactly the kind of superhuman specimen that draws crowds and wins competitions in the world of professional bodybuilding. Danielle was known for his overwhelming size, the kind of physique that made people stop and stare when he walked into a room. In a sport where bigger is almost always considered better, he had taken the concept of mass to its logical extreme, packing muscle onto his tall frame until he looked like something out of a comic book rather than a flesh and blood human being. His death came suddenly as he collapsed from cardiac arrest. Some reports suggested that he suffered a head injury from the fall itself, adding an additional layer of tragedy to an already devastating situation. What we do know is that Danielle had a known heart condition, a fact that makes his continued pursuit of extreme bodybuilding all the more poignant. At 33 years old, Danielle was just entering what should have been the prime of his competitive career. Many bodybuilders don't hit their peak until their mid to late 30s, when years of accumulated muscle development combine with the maturity and experience needed to present a truly polished package on stage. Danielle never got the chance to reach that peak. What makes Danielle's case particularly instructive is that he reportedly knew he had a heart condition, yet he continued to pursue competitive bodybuilding anyway. This raises profound questions about the pressure athletes feel to continue competing even when they know the risks, the role of governing bodies in monitoring athletes' health, and the personal responsibility each individual bears for their own well-being. In the end, Danielle's passion for the sport he loved appears to have contributed directly to his untimely death. Danielle's death came from a cardiac event, the most common cause of death among bodybuilders. Not all gym fatalities are heart-related. Our next story involves a completely different kind of tragedy, one that reminds us of the inherent dangers of lifting extremely heavy weights. Vicky. Not all gym deaths occur because of heart attacks. Tragic case of Justin Vicky, an Indonesian bodybuilder who died in Bali in 2023 at approximately 30 years of age, serves as a sobering reminder that the heavy weights used in serious strength training can themselves become deadly under the wrong circumstances. Justin was at a gym in Bali, attempting a squat with a barbell loaded to an enormous 210 kilograms. That's approximately 462 pounds of iron resting across his shoulders. The squat is considered the king of all exercises in strength training circles, a compound movement that recruits more muscle mass than almost any other lift. But it's also one of the most technically demanding and potentially dangerous exercises, especially when performed with heavy weights. During the attempt, something went catastrophically wrong. Justin collapsed under the weight, and the resulting fall broke his neck. The injuries he sustained were not survivable, and he died from the trauma caused by this terrible accident. Justin's death sparked important conversations within the fitness community about the importance of proper spotting, appropriate safety equipment, and knowing one's limits when it comes to maximum effort attempts. While the pursuit of strength is admirable, and pushing one's limits is part of what makes athletes great, there is always a calculated risk involved when heavy weights are involved, and sometimes, even with all precautions in place, tragedy can strike in an instant. The circumstances of Justin's death underscore a fundamental truth about strength training that is sometimes forgotten in the pursuit of personal records and social media glory. The weights we lift don't care about our ambitions. A 462-pound barbell doesn't know that the person beneath it has trained for years to handle that load. When something goes wrong, a momentary loss of balance, a muscle that doesn't fire properly, a failed rep that can't be recovered, consequences can be catastrophic and irreversible. But while his death was caused by an acute accident, the most common pattern we've seen throughout this video involves the slow, silent damage that extreme training inflicts on the heart over time, a pattern that was documented in medical literature decades before many of these tragedies occurred. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.